Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Of course, I'm in the middle of my Hellraiser movie reviews, and right now I'm going to review number 6 in the franchise. This is Hellraiser Hellseeker. It came out in 2006. I have it in this box set right here. Almost done. Almost done. I'm getting very close. We're about to have our 11th movie, in case anybody doesn't know, with the reboot coming out from David Bruckner on Hulu. I keep wanting to throw that out there so people know while I'm trying to bomb out these reviews as fast as possible. Anyway, I'm really excited for the reboot, and Hellseeker is one that I love the title of, I love the poster of course you saw that in the thumbnail, and it came out 2 years in 2002 after the 2000 previous first direct-to-video film. This one's also direct-to-video, called Hellraiser Inferno. That one is my absolute favorite of the Hellraiser franchise, of course assuming that the new reboot won't be that by the time it comes out. Hellseeker with the cool title, the really great looking red poster that I've always loved. I just think this is a lesser version of Inferno. The two have very many things in common. I have a lot of things to talk about with this particular movie. But I'll tell you this, the first time I saw it, I remember it being more of a negative experience than a positive one. And this time around, I think I had more of a positive experience than a negative one. And again, even with the lower budget and everything being a direct-to-video film, at some points it can look better with the actual look of it. Directing, cinematography, everything. A lot of the time, even though it looks cheap, just like Inferno looks a little bit cheaper with the lower budget stuff, sometimes it looks better than Inferno. But most of the things here, again, to me, are almost a poorer execution of Inferno. And I love that film. I just think this one's pretty decent, above average, a solid movie. I really recommend it if you're a fan of Inferno like myself, or you like things like Silent Hill, different things like that. By the time that we got to Inferno on direct-to-video, we were doing some new things with the Hellraiser franchise that a lot of people don't like. By the way, this is the first one that Mr. Bota directed. I think it's David Bota? Rick Bota, I think is his name. Or Bota, B-O-T-A, I'm not really sure with his name. Now, he directed this one, and then the next year, he directed both Deader and Hellworld. Within 3 months, both of those movies came out. I think Deader was like June 7th or something of that year, I think it was 2005, and Hellworld was out in like September. I'm not even kidding. Go look it up. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. Anyway, so, Hellseeker is being a little bit too close to Inferno, which I don't really mind that. I think that they had a plan at one point to make more movies like this and like Inferno for this franchise. I don't really have a problem with it. I actually really like Inferno. Of course I love it actually, but I really like the movies that are more like this in this franchise, you know? I want to see more movies like this in general, whether it be part of this franchise or not. They're heavily inspired by Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins, and I love that. Again, they're heavily inspired, especially Inferno, by like Silent Hill. And I think they were trying to cash in on that kind of thing, because of course this is around that time where like Silent Hill 1 and 2 were the only ones out, and they were massive. They were absolutely massive. They knew what they were doing, and that's fine. I love those movies and those video games, so I don't have a problem with it. Hellseeker is basically bringing back Kirsty, aka Ashley Lawrence. She comes back. She's barely in the movie, but she's in much more of it than a small cameo like she was in Hell on Earth. She's in this for maybe 8 minutes of the movie, have an hour and a half runtime, but she's not our main character here. Can you believe that? It's kind of a little surprising. I thought that she was in this a lot more than she actually is, but she's not. We actually follow her husband, who, when they're driving to wherever they were going, they get into a car accident, they go off a bridge, and supposedly life changes and things get a little weird. Now, we kind of follow him, the husband, and kind of his weird things that are happening to him after this car accident. His life is pretty much changed at this point. And he starts to immediately, as soon as he wakes up in the hospital, with his depression and hurt and anxiety and so many things that are hitting him all at once after a big accident like that. And you feel bad for this guy, by the way, because the actor Dean Winters does a really good job. I don't know him from anything. I looked into his entire acting history, by the way. I cannot find out where I know this guy. He just looks familiar. He looks like a guy that would be on like Full House for a couple of episodes or something. He looks so familiar. I know I've seen him maybe in an advertisement or something, but I've never really seen anything he's been in, like anything big he's done. But the guy does a pretty good job. Basically, all of these things that are hitting him, all these emotions and everything, his life has changed. He starts to have all of these women that he doesn't really know that well. Like one girl at an apartment that he lives in, his like acupuncture lady. All of these women around him just start throwing themselves at him, including his own boss, after his wife is, you know, dead. After his whole life has changed. It's pretty weird in that regard, but it fits to me for the Hellraiser themes. Hellraiser's very much not just about pain and disgust and grossness and murder and death, all these things, hell, hellfire, brimstone. It's also about lust and sex and all these different things, and that's a big part of this movie, even more so to me than Inferno was. It's almost more pushing the point and the boundaries than Inferno did. It's really trying to focus on this idea of this guy having amnesia a lot about his life. Really, the only thing he remembers is his wife, Kirsty, but he might have not been a good guy. We kind of feel bad for him, but there are some little hints here and there that really, to me, held my curiosity throughout this movie as I watched it this time, that he might not be a good guy. And by the end of this movie, you might be in a place too where you don't really know what to think about him either. And of course, Hellraiser movies, we have Cenobites lingering around. There's some hints that maybe he and Kirsty had come across the, you know, Lament configuration, or Lemerchant's configuration, whatever you want to call that, the puzzle box. And that could be causing some issues too, but he's not really sure about everything there. I will say this, when it comes to the acting, I think everybody does a really solid job. It's not perfect, but I think like the lead police officer guy who's investigating the husband here, I think he does a great job. I think Dean Winters does a great job as the main character here, playing the husband of Kirsty. I think when Ashley Lawrence is in the movie for a little bit, she does really good. There's some decent twists, in my opinion. Again, this movie is above average to me. I enjoy it a lot more than most people do. The direct-to-video budget doesn't really bother me that much, because to me, this film doesn't really feel that low budget, the way people seem to just bash these movies constantly. I understand Hellraiser Deader and Hellworld being direct-to-video because they look and feel like it. But Rick Botta, his directing style here is so different from in Deader, where I started watching that, and from what I remember of Hellworld, the directing style went so downhill. Maybe it's a budgetary thing, I don't know, for those two movies. But for this one, I like his directing style. I think the way that certain things are revealed and the camera angles, the way the camera moves, all of those things really affect this movie a lot. Not only with the sets and everything else. I think all of it really works together, and I think the writing being more about revealing small hints here and there throughout this movie about this man, this husband's past, really interests me a lot. I think it's very well executed. That being said, with the writing... I also mentioned about the Jacob's Ladder thing, how these movies, Inferno and Hellseeker, are very, very influenced by Silent Hill and Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder has a lot of fake-outs, but it's a great, well-executed fake-out over and over again, pretty much. It's a fantastic movie because of how well it did that back in the day. This one, Inferno was very influenced by that, but Inferno to me is genuinely scary. It scares the hell out of me. I'm genuinely terrified by that movie. It's why it's my highest rated. I love it. I love the look of it. I love Scott Derrickson's direction. There's so many positives about that movie, including the demons in that movie. Here, with the writing and the fake-out thing, there is a fake-out so often in this movie. I'm not going to tell you how many, but it happens so often that it's almost supposed to make you feel schizophrenic. And I mean that in a weird, kind of complimentary way, because I think they kind of succeed at that. Not to the extent of something like the first one, or not the first one, Inferno, or like Jacob's Ladder, or Silent Hill for that matter. It doesn't succeed to that extent, but for what this is, as Hellraiser Part 6, I think it works. I actually really don't mind that kind of jumping all over the place. We don't know what's real and what's fake. Scenes changing in the dead middle of a scene, going from one scene to another. One character recognizes our main guy, the next scene they don't. That's fascinating. That's something that the new Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix really pulled off as well. If you're looking for that kind of weird mind twist of a movie, this is for you. Hellseeker has very much got some things I think would impress more people that don't really give it a shot. People who love psychological thrillers or supernatural thrillers. amnesia movies, that kind of thing, this would be for you, I think, because I've always enjoyed it to an extent. And I enjoyed it more this time, like I said, than I did the previous time, even though I think it's a little bit too much like Inferno, but a little bit just slightly different and a little bit different enough that it doesn't really land the places that I think Inferno did. With all that being said, let's move along to the cinematography and the directing. Again, I like both of those. I think they both look really solid. I don't know what happened between this movie and Deader and Hellworld, all being directed by Rick Botta, like I said. But I will tell you this film doesn't feel cheap. The way the directing style and everything is, it works really well for me compared to what I've seen in Deader so far when I started watching that last night. There is quite a few practical effects in here, some makeup stuff, but there's so much of a focus on psychological horror in this particular movie. You don't really have a whole lot of effects to begin with. There is a lot of CGI in this movie. Not to the extent of something like, from what I remember, of like Hellworld. If I could be wrong, I could be wrong. It doesn't have so much CGI in that extent, but it's the kind of bad CGI that like Freddy vs. Jason that came out a year after this had with the worm scene, if you remember that, in the Freddy vs. Jason movie. There also happens to be some kind of weird fish worm thing in this movie, and it's CGI, and it's horrible. Don't do CGI in direct-to-video movies. When are we going to learn this lesson? It's been so long, and no one seems to understand that. Don't do it. You don't have the budget to make that look good. If it's direct-to-streaming, like a VHS movie, or a Paranormal Activity Next of Kin type of movie, then do it. That's fine. You probably have the budget for that. But anything else, don't do that. Okay? Let's all agree on that from now on. Any low-budget filmmakers out there, please, for the love of God, do not put CGI in your movies. You don't have the budget, or probably even the talent, to be able to make it that good and that realistic. Sadly enough, with all the good things in this movie, you have that. One of the characters I forgot to talk about once again in his own franchise was Brad Dudley, coming back to play, what's his face? Pinhead. Did I say Brad Dudley? Is that his name? I'm having a... Doug Bradley. Oh god, it's an early morning. I didn't get enough sleep. I'm so sorry. Doug Bradley, not Brad Dudley. What the hell was I thinking? Doug Bradley comes back to play Pinhead. He's in this a slight more than he was in Inferno, right? And he's fine. He's doing a good job. He's barely here, but he's in here more than Inferno. That's really all I have to say. This, once again, feels like a movie that was written not being a Hellraiser movie, like Inferno, and Bloodline, in my opinion. That just, with a few small tweaks, became a Hellraiser movie by the studio interference. I don't care what anybody says, that's what it feels like with Inferno. As much as I love that movie, that's what this feels like too. If you took out the Pinhead elements, this might have been a bigger, more fantastically well-known thriller, you know? But I don't mind it. I mean, it's above average for me. I like it. It's a solid flick. I recommend it for people who like this kind of psychological thriller aspect to these movies. Or to this and Inferno. Because Deader doesn't really have that. I'm already seeing that now as I'm watching it, but we'll get to that when I review that in the next review. What about the music in this movie? Hellseeker's music is sometimes reminiscent to that kind of bluesish feel of Inferno. Very, very few times. Not very often at all. But a lot of the time, you're getting generic sound effects, things that you've heard a billion times. If you're on Red Letter Media's YouTube channel and you watch a lot of their stuff, you're going to hear the same sound effects in this movie that you hear from that channel and from a lot of like channels that are using public domain sound effects, things you've heard in TV shows since you were a kid. You're going to hear that stuff a lot, and the music is no different. Some of it is just stuff that I'm like, I've heard that blended in with this original, low-budget, straight-to-video music. If you've seen straight-to-video movies and you know straight-to-video music, how cheap it sounds, how weak it sounds, how it's not really designed for the movie you're watching a lot of the time. That's the case with the music here, and I didn't think that was the case with Inferno. I thought they would just reuse the same music from that to this. I don't think they do, though. They should have, but they didn't. That one being more of a noir thriller, even though it had the psychological aspect, that really worked there. This is more of like, instead of having a cop, you have a guy, the victim of the situation that you're focusing on. I kind of wish the music had a nice changeover to that, but this straight-to-video music, it doesn't really land for me. Anyway, when it comes to Hellraiser 6, or Part 6, or just Hellraiser, Hellseeker, whatever you want to call this movie, it's a weaker Inferno. But I don't want to seem like I'm just trashing it. I like it a lot. I think it's a really solid flick, and I enjoy it for the most part. I had a really good time watching this time, even though it's a little wish-washy, even though it held my curiosity basically on the mystery. It might not be as good for a rewatch for most people the way Inferno is. I think Inferno, for most people who love that movie the way I do, not only do I think it's the best of the Hellraiser films, but I also think it's the most rewatchable of the films. I think I can sit down anytime I want, especially during the fall. It feels like a very fall movie. And just really enjoy it, really take in the atmosphere, really get scared by a lot of the horrific things in there. This is kind of weak sometimes. And it feels like a lesser Inferno, I'm sorry. If I had to rate Hellraiser Hellseeker on a 5-star basis, I think it's above average, but it doesn't deserve my next to highest review rating. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I like it. I think it's solid. It's fun. I had a good time. But for what it is in execution, the problems that it has, the budgetary restraints, the CGI that doesn't need to be here, could have been a practical effect. Well, those things could typically be practical effects in this movie. Again, maybe it's a budget thing. I can't see CGI being cheaper. When it comes to all of that in accumulation, it's just a weak movie. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, like I said. It's solid, I like it, I definitely like it. And it's going to be kind of high in my rankings because I'm not a big Hellraiser guy, as you guys know, so I will be surprised to see what people think about the ranking place that this will have by the end of these reviews. When the reboot comes out, I'll have the official ranking of all the stuff when I reviewed all the movies. We'll see. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. God bless you all. I'm currently watching Deader. I will have a review out for that sometime soon. I hope you'll tune out for that, or tune in for that as well. And thank you guys for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section down below about Hellseeker, about the rest of the series, your ranking, all of that. I'd love to hear everything down in the comments section down below once again. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.